All right, so you've got Rhonda Byrne's The Secret sitting there, and you're wondering, is it worth my time?
Well, let me cut to the chase. It's a yes,
Okay.
but a very cautious
A
yes.
cautious yes.
Yeah, think of it more like a thought experiment than a life manual.
Interesting. So not exactly a glowing endorsement then.
Hmm.
What is it about The Secret that makes you so hesitant? For listeners who haven't encountered it, the book's premise is all about this idea of the law of attraction, where your thoughts can manifest your reality. So think success, you get success. Think love, you find love. That sounds pretty tempting.
Oh, it absolutely does. It really taps into that desire we all have for a bit more control over our lives, like a little sprinkle of magic. And there's IS value in positive thinking. I'm not denying that. But The Secret kind of takes it to an extreme, I think. It
Yeah.
oversimplifies really complex topics. It lacks solid evidence. And it even kind of dips into victim-blaming territory at times.
Victim blaming.
Yeah, like saying that someone with cancer somehow attracted that disease into their life.
Whoa. Okay. That's pretty heavy and a pretty big red flag, I'd say. But, even some of the people who are critical of the book still acknowledge that there's something appealing about this core message.
Yeah.
Like our blogger friend over at For the Love of Books gave it 4 stars.
Okay.
And they really loved the simplicity of the like attracts like concept. Just keep things positive, and that can lead to positive outcomes.
Yeah.
Maybe there's some truth to that, even if it's not as simple and straightforward as the book makes it out to be. What do you think?
Well, there is a kernel of truth to the power of our thoughts and beliefs. I'll grant you that.
Yeah.
But correlation doesn't equal causation. Just because you wake up in a good mood and have a good day doesn't mean your good mood caused all the good things that happened.
Yeah.
There are so many other factors at play. One Goodreads reviewer put it really well, I thought. They called it magical thinking that we're all supposed to grow out of as adults.
Magical thinking. So you're saying it's a little too simplistic? Then maybe it's not about literal manifestation. But couldn't you argue that having a positive mindset makes you more open to opportunities, more likely to take action that could lead to success?
See, and that's where The Secret really falls short.
Yeah.
It almost completely ignores the whole part about action and effort, like those crucial ingredients for actually achieving your goals. It makes it sound like all you have to do is sit back, think positive thoughts, and then just wait for the universe to magically deliver it all to you. There are other self-help books out there that touch on similar themes, like Think and Grow Rich, for example.
Right.
Which also emphasize things like taking concrete steps and making plans and putting in the work alongside the whole mindset piece.
So The Secret is more about wishing than doing.
Interesting.
Maybe that's why the writing feels a bit thin and confusing, like our blogger mentioned. It's all about this big, dramatic secret, but then it doesn't really deliver on the how-to.
And that secret isn't even really a secret.
Right.
It's been around for ages, just repackaged in different forms.
Yeah.
The lack of citations, the really simplistic explanations, especially when it comes to complex subjects like quantum physics, it really hurts the book's credibility. It's like using a buzzword to sound smart, but not actually understanding the concept behind it.
So you're saying it's more about marketing than substance. That's interesting. One Goodreads reviewer even pointed out how the author seemed to be capitalizing on the whole Da Vinci Code craze at the time, framing this age-old concept as this newly revealed secret. Clever marketing for sure, but also kind of misleading, don't you think?
Exactly. And when you actually look closer, the logic kind of starts to crumble. If this secret is so universal and so powerful, why did all these historical tragedies happen? Were they all just products of collective negative thinking? One Goodreads reviewer used a great example. They talked about the oil discovery in Belize. A country that was struggling economically. Did they suddenly have a collective positive thought that just manifested these oil reserves? Of course not. Real life is way more complicated than The Secret makes it seem.
So we've got this shiny, alluring concept on the surface, but then underneath, there are a lot of holes in the execution. And the logic, I gotta admit, I'm feeling a little skeptical now. Is it even worth reading at this point?
Well, it depends on what you're looking for. If you just want a quick, entertaining read that might spark some initial reflection, then go for it.
Okay.
But if you're looking for like a practical guide to self-improvement or a deep dive into these concepts, I think you'll be disappointed. There are much better books out there that explore the power of mindset in a more grounded and nuanced way. Think and Grow Rich and The Power of Your Subconscious Mind are good examples.
Okay. So you're saying there are better options out there if you're serious about this stuff.
Exactly.
All right. Then let's dive into those a little bit.
Sure.
What makes them stand out from The Secret in your view?
Well, Think and Grow Rich, for example. While it does emphasize a positive mindset, it's more about setting clear goals, developing a plan, and then working persistently towards them. It's less about wishing and hoping and more about aligning your actions with your thoughts. Napoleon Hill, the author, he really dives into the importance of things like autosuggestion and the power of belief.
Hmm.
But he doesn't shy away from the need for hard work and strategy.
So it's about creating a self-fulfilling prophecy through a combination of belief and effort, not just passively waiting for the universe to hand you things.
Exactly. And then you have The Power of Your Subconscious Mind by Joseph Murphy, which delves into the psychological aspects of how our beliefs and mental patterns can actually shape our reality. He talks about the importance of reprogramming negative thought patterns and tapping into your subconscious potential, not just thinking happy thoughts.
Okay, so that sounds more like taking control of your own mind rather than trying to control external circumstances.
Right. It acknowledges that while we don't have control over everything that happens to us, we do have a significant amount of control over how we react and how we shape our own thoughts and beliefs.
So if these other books offer a more nuanced and grounded approach, what does The Secret really offer? It's got to have some redeeming qualities, right?
Well, it does bring up the importance of gratitude and visualization, which are valuable tools for personal growth.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people find those aspects of the book helpful. It has sparked a lot of conversations about the power of mindset. But the problem is that it presents these concepts in a way that oversimplifies and often misleads.
It's like it takes a kernel of truth and then wraps it in a whole lot of hype and questionable claims.
That's a great way to put it. It's the presentation and the lack of depth that really diminish its value. It can be a stepping stone to exploring these ideas further, but it's crucial to recognize its limitations and seek out more substantial resources for real personal growth.
Speaking of limitations, one of the biggest criticisms of The Secret is that it almost completely ignores the role of external factors and systemic issues. It's like it pretends those things don't even exist.
And that can be really problematic, particularly for people who are facing difficult circumstances due to factors that are completely outside of their control.
All right.
It can create a sense of false hope and even lead to blaming themselves for things that aren't their fault.
That's where that idea of spiritual bypassing comes in, right?
Yes, spiritual bypassing is a term used to describe the tendency to use spiritual or self-help concepts to avoid facing uncomfortable emotions or taking responsibility for our actions. It's easier to think, I'm not successful because I haven't thought positively enough, than to acknowledge maybe systemic barriers or personal shortcomings that might require more difficult work to address. And The Secret, unfortunately, lends itself to that kind of thinking.
So it's like using positive thinking as a shield against the complexities of life.
In a way, yes. And while there's value in cultivating a positive mindset, it's important to remember that life is messy and we don't have control over everything. Sometimes bad things happen, and it's not because we attracted them with our thoughts.
It sounds like The Secret is trying to sell a fantasy of control, which can actually backfire and leave people feeling worse off.
Yeah.
So where does that leave our listener who's still curious about the book? Should they give it a read or steer clear?
If they approach it with a critical eye, knowing its limitations and potential pitfalls, it can be an interesting read that might spark some initial curiosity about the power of mindset. But it's crucial to remember that it's just one perspective and a very limited one at that.
So read it with a grain of salt and maybe a healthy dose of skepticism.
Absolutely. Don't take it as gospel and don't let it be your only source of information on these topics.
So if our listener wants to explore these concepts further, where should they go after The Secret?
Mindset. The New Psychology of Success by Dweck is a great next step. She delves into the power of beliefs and how developing a growth mindset, the belief that you can learn and grow, can lead to greater achievement and fulfillment.
Okay, that sounds like a more realistic and empowering approach. What about for those who want to put these ideas into action?
Atomic Habits by James Clear is fantastic for that. He breaks down habit formation into manageable steps, providing a framework for building positive habits and breaking negative ones.
So we're moving from the realm of wishing and hoping to actual concrete actions.
Exactly. It's about taking control of your own behaviors and actions, not just your thoughts.
All right, so The Secret might be an entertaining read, but it's important to recognize its limitations. For a deeper understanding of these concepts and practical tools for growth, there are much better resources out there.
I completely agree. It's all about finding what resonates with you and taking what works while leaving the rest behind.
Great advice. So for our listener, if The Secret has piqued your interest, go ahead and give it a read. But don't stop there. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and most importantly, keep growing.
The real secret is that the journey of self-discovery is ongoing. There's always more to learn, more to experience, and more to unlock within ourselves.
Beautifully said. And that wraps up our deep dive into The Secret. Thanks for joining us.
It does seem to oversimplify things in that regard, you know? We're not like isolated beings operating in a vacuum. Our surroundings and the people we interact with have a huge impact on our thoughts and beliefs and ultimately our outcomes.
Yeah, for sure. It's like trying to maintain a positive mindset when you're constantly surrounded by negativity. That's got to be an uphill battle.
Oh, absolutely. And The Secret doesn't really address that. It's all about focusing on your own thoughts, but it doesn't acknowledge the influence of external factors like societal structures, systemic issues, or even just the people you happen to spend time with.
It's like it's telling you to just ignore all of that and just focus on your own little bubble of positive thinking.
Which can be problematic because it can create a false sense of control and even lead to blaming yourself for circumstances that are totally outside of your control.
Right, and that brings us back to that idea of spiritual bypassing. It's tempting to use positive thinking as a way to avoid dealing with difficult emotions or taking responsibility for our actions.
Yeah.
Like it's easier to say, well, I'm not successful, it's because I didn't think positively enough, rather than facing up to the challenges and complexities of real life.
Exactly. And while cultivating a positive mindset is valuable, it's not like a magic bullet that's going to solve all of our problems or shield us from the realities of life. Sometimes bad things happen, and it's not because we attracted them with our thoughts.
So it's about finding that balance between taking responsibility for our thoughts and also recognizing the limitations of our control. We can choose to focus on the positive, but we also need to acknowledge the influence of external factors and be prepared to deal with challenges that are outside of our control.
I think that's a great way to sum it up. It's about finding that middle path where we harness the power of our minds while also staying grounded in the realities of the world around us.
And recognizing that personal growth is a journey, not a destination. The Secret might be a starting point for some, but it's important to keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep seeking out new perspectives.
Well said. There's always more to learn and more to discover about ourselves and the world around us. And that ongoing exploration is what makes life so interesting.
I think that's a fantastic note to end on. So for our listener, if you're curious about The Secret, go ahead and give it a read. But remember, it's just one perspective. Keep an open mind, explore other resources, and most importantly, trust your own intuition and your own journey.
That's the real secret to a fulfilling life. Embracing the journey of self-discovery with curiosity and an open heart.
Beautifully said. And that wraps up our deep dive into The Secret. Thanks for joining us, and as always, keep those minds curious. So we talked about The Secret having some, pluses and minuses. And one thing that struck me was this idea that it frames the law of attraction as this big secret when it's not really a secret at all. Is that just a marketing ploy, or do you think there's more to it than that?
I think it's a bit of both, to be
Right.
honest. The concept of like attracts like has been around for centuries. It's popped up in various forms in different spiritual and philosophical traditions. So in that sense, yeah, it's not a new idea. But I think what Rhonda Byrne did really well was package it in a way that felt fresh and exciting. Like she
Yeah.
tapped into that human desire for there to be this secret key to happiness and success. And she presented it in a really accessible way with all the, dramatic music and visuals in the movie.
Right. It definitely had that aha moment feel to it. It's like you've just unlocked some hidden knowledge. But when you strip away all the bells and whistles, it's basically just positive thinking with a fancy name.
Exactly. And that's where I think the problem lies. Because while there's nothing inherently wrong with positive thinking, The Secret kind of presents it as this cure-all solution to every problem, which just isn't realistic.
It sets people up for disappointment because real life is messy and unpredictable. Things don't always go the way we want them to, no matter how positively we think.
Right. And that can be really frustrating for people who buy into the idea that they have complete control over their circumstances. Because when things inevitably go wrong, they start to blame themselves. Like, oh, I must not have visualized hard enough, or my thoughts weren't pure enough. And that can lead to a lot of guilt and self-doubt.
That's where I think that concept of spiritual bypassing is really relevant.
Yeah.
Because it's tempting to use positive thinking as a way to avoid dealing with difficult emotions or taking responsibility for our actions.
Yeah.
But sometimes you need to sit with those uncomfortable feelings and figure out what they're trying to teach you.
Absolutely. And that's something that The Secret doesn't really address. It kind of encourages people to suppress or ignore negative emotions, which isn't healthy in the long run.
So it's like putting a Band-Aid on a wound without actually cleaning it out and letting it heal properly.
Exactly. And while there's a time and a place for focusing on the positive, It's important to acknowledge the full spectrum of human experience, both the good and the bad, because that's what makes us whole.
I think that's a great takeaway for your listeners. The secret might offer some inspiration and food for thought, but it's important to approach it with a critical eye. And remember that there's no quick fix or magic solution to life's challenges.
Exactly. Real growth comes from doing the inner work, from facing our challenges head on and learning from our experiences.
And from embracing the journey with all its ups and downs.
Beautifully said. I think that's a perfect note to end on.
All right, well, thanks for joining us today. It's been a fascinating deep dive into The Secret. And for our listeners, remember, keep questioning, keep exploring, and keep those minds curious.